Greetings to everyone on my channel. Sit back. Now you will listen to another incredible story about the relationship of a married couple and the incredible exposure of his wife. I will ask you to subscribe to my channel and like it. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me. I've heard a lot of vows, promises, and compliments in my life, but the best thing I've heard is silence. There is no lie in it. One great girl, or rather, a girl, even a woman, because Urka is married and has been for a long time, gave birth to a child, who is now sitting under the table and smiling at me. She is married to my boss Leshka. He is a great guy. We crossed paths with him by chance. I had problems with my job, I just quit, so I immediately took a newspaper with ads. It so happened that I got a job at an advertising agency. I didn't know much about advertising, but given my past experience, I was hired as an administrator. No, I did not sell advertising. There are agents for this. They were commanded by Ludmilla. I had to keep in touch with the engineers of the TV tower, newspaper editors, Moscow, and other structures in order for our business to flourish. However, he flourished. Urka is cheerful, always laughing and chatting. She carries a book in her purse all the time. As soon as he has free time, he takes it out and starts reading his novels. About what? I ask her when I go to the chief's office. She often comes to work for him. As he says, it's boring at home, to look at people. Historical and about love, you're not interested. She replied and made grimaces at me. Why is it not interesting? No, really, why aren't guys interested in love books? Probably because it's all fiction. Well, you never know what you can write. So the girls sigh. There's Cupid. Holding out the last letter, she says, in general, love and all that, and rolls her eyes to the sky. And carrots, I add. What kind of carrots? He asks me in surprise. Well, love is a carrot, I explain to her. The Joker, she often called me that, but I wasn't offended because I know she's joking. When she was sitting in her husband's office, she came to Lyudka, and if she was not there, then to me. Complaining that Leshka doesn't pay attention to her, is so businesslike and always talking on the phone or staring at his computer is boring. But I'm not bored. I have plenty of free time. I'll organize everyone in the morning. If necessary, I'll ask for help. Well, it's just for business. And then I don't even know what to do. I used to skip school, but this is a job, you can't skip it. So we sat with Urka for hours and just chatted. It's nice to talk to her. She always found a topic. Summer is a problematic time for someone, but not for us. For several years in a row, the volume of advertising for the summer has been reduced by 20 to 30%. This is normal. We tried to sign contracts in advance, back in the spring, until August. So there is nothing special to do at work in the summer. A lull. There was, so to speak, a team for urgent matters, if somewhere it was necessary to amend the company's regulations or something urgent. That's what they were doing, and almost the entire office was on vacation. Our team is young. It just so happened that this direction was new. The elderly or aged could not understand the topic of what to do here. We only had 3 people of age. This is the caretaker. Otherwise, how can it be without him? The head of the outdoor advertising department and the accountant. All the others are young people. It so happened that computer scientists and videographers are guys, also an engineer and broadcast operators. All the others are girls. All in all, a good company. At the beginning of the summer, before we went on vacation, we had a small party in the office. This is right. Events bring you closer. You can relax and just chat, dance, and drink champagne there. Orders were pouring in. Over the past year, the company's staff has increased significantly, and now we occupied 2 whole floors of the building, and we plan to occupy 1 more. It was currently being renovated. Urka is a pretty girl. I can't call her a woman. It's somehow wrong. At least a girl, but not a woman. Of course, beauty is different for everyone. Someone has a nose or eyes, someone has a figure and posture. But she seemed to have everything. The first, the second, and the third. She's just a nice girl. And most importantly, she didn't pretend to be the boss's wife. She was just cheerful. The party was a success. I haven't rested like this for a long time. I was a little tired of the routine and was glad that I could break out of these walls. But at the same time, it was sad. What am I going to do alone? Are you bored? Urka came up and winked. No. Somehow I tried to justify myself. My gaze slid over Urka. She was wearing some kind of dress that looked like a school dress. A white collar, the same white cuffs and trim at the bottom of the dress, and the fabric was dark blue with small white polka dots. The length of the dress resembled a school apron, well above the knees. "Don't look," she said. "Is it noticeable?" I said, a little embarrassed, and it was really awkward. "Sure," she replied and smiled, then went on dancing and having fun. That's how we spent the evening, having fun, but with a slight sadness. "Thank you." Urka thanked me gently. "You are wonderful." She smiled and sipped her glass. "Oh," she drawled. She closed her eyes, drank, and, without opening them, added, "Just admiration." Urka's face was beaming. She had not yet retired from dancing, so she was breathing heavily and drinking her champagne with pleasure. "I have another champagne," he told her carefully. "What is it?" Opening her eyes and looking at me, she asked. "Champagne. It's kind of French," I admitted, although I didn't know for sure. "I just kept it for important clients." "Come on," she said, and drained her glass. "Let's go," I replied cheerfully. The management offices were on the floor above. When I got up, I noticed that the floor was closed. I had to run for the key. Urka was standing all this time, waiting for me to come back and open the door. "Is there no one here?" "What is it?" she asked in a whisper. "No, we're alone," I replied in a whisper. Quite. "What is it?" she asked, looking around. "Absolutely," I confirmed, smiling. "All right, let's go," she said and walked confidently to the office. Urka was walking, examining the paintings on the walls. Sometimes she glanced at me, checking to see if I was lagging behind. I opened the office and took out the champagne. "It's warm," I said. "So what?" she replied, looking out the window. A minute later, the cork popped. "Oh," cried Urka and smiled. I poured her a glass. "It's really warm," she confirmed, taking a sip. She drank slowly, in small sips, smiling. I was pleased to watch how she holds a glass, how her fingers play with a piece of paper on the table. I took a few sips too. Urka came up to me and looked seriously into my eyes. "And you?" she began, and her face lit up with a smile. She hesitated a little, but after a second, she started talking again on a more neutral topic, and the evening continued calmly. "Thanks. And you're doing great," Urka said and smiled. Urka didn't want any complications. Yes, something in her soul awakened old feelings, as in her youth, but she was a realist and did not want to act like her friends, who sometimes boasted of connections on the side. She loved her husband. She just wanted to feel a little emotion from communicating with another person, but no more. Her heart tickled as if someone had lightly touched it. She could hardly breathe and felt agitated, but she did not understand why this was so and why she had done all this. Perhaps she would have smiled again, but someone appeared on the floor and turned on the light in the hallway, which distracted her. "Max invites me to go to his village for the summer," Leshka said one morning. "To the village?" Irina was surprised. "What should I do there?" "I thought we'd go to Egypt, you promised." She immediately expressed her displeasure. "I'm sorry, I can't. Lately there have been frequent failures on the air. Customers are unhappy." "I see," she said with disappointment. Urka understood that broadcasting is important. Advertising on television brings most of the profits, and Leshka had to pay attention to this. It's a pity. She had already arranged for her son to spend the whole summer with her mother and wanted to have a good rest, but the prospect of a trip to the village did not please her. "No," she said firmly to her husband. "Then I'll stay here. It's better to go to the lake with Margarita." Igor also went to her father's village. "Come on." Leshka tried to calm her down. "We'll go on New Year's Eve." "You already promised," she murmured. "I promised that this time we will definitely go. Max says that his house is large, two-storied, has a garden and berries." "Berries? Weeding?" she asked with displeasure, sinking down on the sofa. "Don't weed," Leshka laughed. "There is a river, a lake. You can go fishing." No. Urka was indignant. And again, no. "Ludmila and her husband will also go, and Victor seems to be going too. Do you have a whole company there?" Irina was surprised. "To rest." "I'll think about it," she said uncertainly. Staying in the city was not the best option. The summer is short, and if it rains, you can come back. But she didn't want to go anywhere at all. An unfamiliar place, a strange house. Still, she agreed, even though she was not happy. Hi, Urka. Victor waved happily when she got out of the car. Nice to see you, she said, getting out of the car and stretching. What are you staring at? Seeing that he was looking at her. I just see you're in a great mood. Okay, come on. I'll show you your room. Are there a lot of rooms here? Irina asked, looking around. The village turned out to be quite decent. Nice houses, smooth roads, even the lighting was there. Everything is civilized, and perhaps there is a water supply. The day didn't go well. There were flies, then mosquitoes, and the house creaked so that everyone could hear who was where. Urka sighed, walking through the garden, dreaming about when Luda would arrive. She didn't get along very well with her husband, but she didn't care much about that, because she couldn't live with him. After a few days, Urka got used to the situation. She quickly got used to it, ran from floor to floor, went outside and returned. Max's mom lived in a separate house, which was built a long time ago, when the main house was being built. Several times Urka went to the river, first with Leshka, and then alone. But she was uncomfortable alone. People were constantly watching. If not guys, then women, and sometimes grandmothers, who see and discuss everything. She watched with interest as Max's mother milked the cow, even tried it herself and realized that there was nothing terrible about it. While exploring the yard and barn, she discovered a hayloft. He was above the cowshed, where sometimes a pig grunted and in the evening a cow lowed. Swallows flew over the roof, which built nests under the ceiling. A wooden ladder could be used to climb up to the crossbar and get to the hayloft. There was some hay left there, and Urka often came there, spread a blanket and read her books about adventures. One day she was lost. She was so engrossed in reading that she did not hear her name. The guys were minding their own business. Maxim helped with the housework, while others went to the forest to pick mushrooms. Urka went with them once, but the mosquitoes quickly convinced her not to return there anymore. It was a hot day. Everyone was tired and felt uncomfortable from the dust and heat, so in the evening they decided to flood the bathhouse. In this heat, and a sauna? Urka did not understand why this was necessary, but when everyone washed up and it became less hot, she decided to try it too and did not regret it. It's like being born again, she said happily, returning to the house with a large towel on her head. I told you so, Max exclaimed. What do you have there? Urka was surprised to see the cloudy liquid in the jar. She sniffed and winced. What is this strange thing? It's a homemade drink, Max replied with confidence, glancing at his half-empty glass. There's no way in the village without it, Leshka said, spreading his hands. Come sit with us, he suggested. No, boys, I won't do it without me, she refused. Urka had already tried this drink once. The taste was sharp, and after that my head hurt. She didn't like it. Well, Urka, come sit with us, Victor pleaded. Okay, she agreed. I'm going to change and come down. Can I help you? Victor joked. I'll do without help, she replied with a smile. And boys, already climbing the stairs to the second floor, she added. Don't get too carried away. What will I do with you later? Yes, we are, answered Leshka. She did not listen to the rest, but went up to her room. The veranda was open and a light cool breeze was blowing. The heat subsided, and it became easy to breathe. Urka took out a long, thin sweater from her things, which she usually wore in winter. He was Leshkin, so he was a little too big. With a wide neck and long sleeves that had to be constantly turned up, putting it on made her feel comfortable. When she came down, the guys were talking about something, mostly about work. What a bore, Irina thought, and sat down to have a snack. Leshka poured her some of the same cloudy liquid. I don't want to, she protested, sniffing the drink, which stung her nose. How do you drink it? She touched it gently with the tip of her tongue. Ugh, that's disgusting. Come on, it's okay, Max replied. After the bathhouse, just what you need. What's filming? She asked Max. The body relaxes and you feel light, he said. You're flying to heaven, aren't you? Urka grinned. How do you know? Leshka immediately clarified. Is he really not that scary? Just in case, Urka asked. She wanted to try. Because she was on vacation, she could afford to relax. You can dilute it, but it's better not to, Max explained and poured some liquid into her small coffee cup. Urka sniffed again. The smell was pungent, but bearable. Gathering her courage, she exhaled and quickly drank the contents. The drink turned out to be very strong. Tears came out of her eyes and Urka, coughing, jumped on the spot. Ugh, that's disgusting, she moaned. How do you drink it? The guys laughed merrily, and she wiped her eyes, trying to come to her senses. More? Max asked with a grin. No, thanks, she replied. What will you do with a cheerful woman? She sat down and helped herself to a salad. Her mouth was still burning, but she was looking at the guys who were still drinking. Of course, they were not real drunkards. They just drank sometimes for the mood. Aren't you hot? Leshka suddenly asked. It's okay, she replied with a smile. The guys started talking about work again. Urka sat with them for a while, relaxing from everyday worries. She stretched, stood on tiptoe, stretched her arms out to the sides and smiled to herself. Urka, you're beautiful, Max said admiringly. Thank you, she replied with a smile. I love you, Victor added. Don't bother a married woman, she joked. I love you anyway, he repeated. She came up to him and, hugging him slightly, said, I love you too, so that everyone could hear. What about me? Max was indignant. I love you too, she replied, walking up to him and giving him a friendly peck on the cheek. Then she returned to her husband and, hugging him, said, Okay, boys, rest. I'm going to get some fresh air. I'm with you, Victor said at once. And me, Max said. It was fresh outside, and a light breeze brought coolness. Urka walked and enjoyed the silence, thinking about her own. Victor walked beside him, but kept his distance, not wanting to impose. Urka smiled at him, and they continued to talk on various neutral topics, just enjoying the moment. The door slammed shut. Urka laughed. She felt funny, because she decided to kiss, and everything immediately came out. She felt a little nervous, but she liked it, and she went back to Victor to continue. Urka plunged into a kiss. She liked the way Victor communicated, how he could joke and say nice things. She didn't think of him as someone more intimate, but she enjoyed spending time with him. They just stood and talked, and then laughed again. Urka, you're wonderful, Victor said in a moment of silence. She smiled and whispered softly, They can hear us. You're amazing, he replied softly. Urka knew that Victor sometimes said what he thought, and did not attach much importance to it. She just smiled back. She liked talking to Victor, just the ease and joy of being able to laugh and be around. She didn't think about the next steps, but just enjoyed the moment without thinking ahead. In the morning, Leshka offered to go on a picnic, and everyone gladly agreed. Urka enjoyed her vacation in nature, feeling free from everyday worries. She sat down on the grass with her legs outstretched and watched with pleasure as the guys prepared the food. Urka, you look amazing as always, Victor joked, throwing her a funny look. Thank you, she replied, realizing that it was just a friendly joke. Everyone laughed and chatted, and the day flew by unnoticed. Urka felt relaxed, enjoying the warm atmosphere and easy communication. She liked being in a company where no one was pretending to be something serious. Everyone was just enjoying the moment. I hope this day will be remembered by all of us, Victor said, raising a glass of lemonade. Of course, Urka happily supported. She returned to her husband and hugged him, feeling that this day was truly a happy one. Everything was simple and easy, and she knew that such moments were the most valuable. You promised, she said softly, noticing his embarrassed look. It was the moment when Victor froze, as if realizing that he had gone too far. He looked at Urka and stopped, trying to get back to reality. She stepped aside a little and sat down on the hay, apparently in thought. It's not fair, she whispered. But then, smiling, she stood up and looked at Victor. He sat down next to her, trying to find the right words. It was a little awkward for both of them, but they continued to just talk, distracting themselves from the tense situation. Let's just talk, Victor suggested, feeling that they needed to be distracted. Urka nodded, agreeing that they should not continue in the same spirit. She decided to just enjoy the moment of communication without unnecessary emotions and difficulties. No one will find us here, he said, trying to calm the situation. Yes, you're right, she smiled, relaxing a little. They continued the conversation, discussing various topics, and soon footsteps and conversations of other guests could be heard against the background of the house. Victor and Urka no longer paid attention to this. They just sat next to each other and laughed at funny stories, remembering past days. Everything returned to normal communication without unnecessary emotions. "Let's go back," Urka suggested, noticing that the conversations on the street were getting louder. They got up and Victor walked her home. Urka felt that this time the situation was resolved calmly, and there were no more awkward moments between them. They both understood that all this was a temporary impulse, and now they were able to return to a normal relationship. When they returned to the company, Urka joined the conversation with friends again, and Victor went to help in the kitchen. The evening continued in a pleasant atmosphere, and everyone enjoyed the conversation and the warm summer evening. He acted as if they had known each other for a long time and could communicate calmly, like old friends. Victor tried to keep the conversation going and joked, which helped Urka relax and feel comfortable. She smiled and laughed, enjoying the pleasant conversation. Other people's voices could be heard nearby, but Urka no longer paid attention to it, immersed in a pleasant atmosphere of lightness. Her mind was elsewhere. She felt relaxed. The conversation was about different topics, and they both enjoyed the moment, forgetting about their worries. Time seemed to have stopped. They continued to communicate without paying attention to others and just enjoyed each other's company. Victor looked at Urka with respect and understanding. They talked about life, about what is important for each of them. At some point, Urka smiled and looked thoughtfully into the distance, enjoying the silence and tranquility. The conversation was light and casual. Urka felt free, as if she could escape from the hustle and bustle of everyday life for a moment. She felt good, and that was the most important thing. At some point, they fell silent, just sat next to each other, enjoying the warmth of a summer evening and the sounds of nature. When the evening came to an end, Victor said goodbye to Urka, leaving pleasant memories of the evening. Urka smiled at him goodbye, feeling that this day was special. She understood that every moment of her life was unique, and this evening was just that, a moment when she could just be herself without unnecessary thoughts and worries.